You're listening to the Quint podcast.
Ban Chinese food, ban Chinese products, delete Chinese apps. In the wake of the death of 20 soldiers at the LAC in Galwan Valley, the anti-China sentiment is viral once again. Protests by trader bodies and common citizens have been raging with a call to boycott Chinese products to show solidarity with the army. Some citizens have gone over the top to teach China a lesson by breaking their made-in-China appliances like TV sets. Some are burning Chinese President Xi Jinping's effigies, while some others are asking for a ban on import and trading of Chinese products. Although India and China have been engaged in a face-off since May that took a deadly turn unseen in close to 5 decades, how practical is it to boycott Chinese goods in India? You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbori. The boycott China tirade is hardly a new phenomenon in India. Back in 2017, during the Doklam standoff, there was a similar rhetoric to ditch Chinese products and go Swadeshi. Even popular faces like Yoga Guru Baba Ramdev endorsed the push to replace Made in China with Made in India to reduce dependency on China. And then again with the COVID-19 pandemic, as China faced backlashes internationally over faulty testing kits, alleged misrepresentation of infection numbers, and also accusations of mishandling the outbreak, anti-China campaigns were being fought online in India to reduce dependence on Chinese electronics. And those ongoing campaigns only got a fresh push with the Indo-China tensions at the Himalayan border, where the PLA troops intruded into the Indian territory in 5 points of the LAC. And as the tensions kept soaring in the border all of May, a particular app called Remove China Apps, which apparently helps purge all Chinese games and software from Android phones, gained immense popularity in India with over 1 million downloads. And ultimately, Google Play had to intervene and remove the app from the Play Store, citing violations. Then came the deadly clashes at the border and the news of the death of Indian soldiers on 15th June that prompted more and more people to join this diatribe against Chinese products. We've seen videos of Indians throwing their TV sets off their balconies or breaking other made-in-China electronic products, but common citizens aren't alone in this display of protest. Even politicians and IAS officers want to send a strong message to China. Take, for instance, Chetan Sanghi, a senior IAS officer who's also the Chief Secretary of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, who tweeted, and I'm quoting his tweet, quote, "My next phone will be #made in India," end quote. Fellow IAS officers also echoed the same sentiment, and one tweet by Dr. Rajendra Bharud, another IAS officer, read, quote, "China must be sent a strong message registering India's protest and anguish," end quote. And Union Minister Ramdas Athwale took it one step forward and even called for a ban on Chinese food and also establishments that serve Chinese dishes in India. He also appealed to Indian citizens to give up eating Chinese food in solidarity with the army. But as the nationalistic sentiments swell up, the question is, can these protests help India overwhelm China at all? Is boycotting Chinese goods that simple? Let's start with a report on Chinese investments in India. A paper by Anant Krishnan that was published just before the lockdown by Brookings India estimated that Chinese sentiments in India amounted to $1.6 billion till 2014, the year Narendra Modi became Prime Minister for the first time. The estimates were made on the basis of data from the Ministry of Commerce of People's Republic of China, publicly available information sourced from Chinese firms, press reports in China and India, and also background information shared by Indian and Chinese officials. And the report further said that in the next 3 years under PM Modi's tenure, the Chinese investments grew 5-fold to $8 billion. But how did this influx of investment come post-2014? Krishnan's paper argues that it was not something India-specific, rather it was a part of a broader surge in Chinese investment abroad between 2013 to 2016. In this period, China almost doubled its overseas investment from $107 billion in 2013 to $196.1 billion in 2016. And India is still not on the top of China's list of investment destinations. It only ranked 31st. But for India, China was the top trading partner from 2013 to 2018. Also, India has a huge trade deficit with China. And I'm also going to read out a few lines from the report that explains exactly where all the investments were made. Quote, among the main sectors receiving this investment between 2014 to 18 were infrastructure, automobiles, energy, real estate, and consumer goods sectors. The second big change starting in 2016 was the entry of Chinese capital in technology sector through investments and acquisitions of Indian startups. Unlike the pre-2014 period, much of the investment is from Chinese private sector. Dozens of Chinese technology firms and venture capital players led by tech giants Alibaba and Tencent have acquired minority or controlling stakes in Indian companies. The single biggest acquisition, however, was in pharmaceuticals. End quote. You can also find the link to the report in the show notes, and I also called up Jayati Ghosh, who's the chairperson of the Center of Economic Studies and Planning at Jawaharlal Nehru University, to explain the extent of Chinese investment in India.
It's not practical at all. The Indian economy is now so heavily dependent on Chinese imports for a full range of essential goods, the most important of which are pharmaceuticals. 70% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, that's the raw materials that go into our drugs, come from China. And along with that, there are essential inputs into all kinds of things: electrical machinery, nuclear reactors, organic chemicals, steel, fertilizer, medical equipment, auto components. I mean, the list goes on and on. And these are not even the final goods. I'm not talking about the televisions and other things that people are busy, throwing on the ground and dancing on. Because, if you look at the areas in which they have invested, they're not really in manufacturing or any of those that would build up our own capabilities. They're basically in just startups. So big companies like Alibaba, Xiaomi, Tencent, Didi Xuxing, they have invested in things like Paytm or Ola or Snapdeal or Swiggy or Zomato or Boycott. These are not technological frontier kinds of things. And these are really an attempt to capture a part of the growing Indian service market, which is led by digital kinds of activities.
And as Professor Ghosh points out, which is also something Krishnan's paper highlights, hundreds of Indian startups like Paytm, Snapdeal, etc. have gotten investments from Chinese finance companies like Alibaba and Tencent. And a lot of these investments were made during PM Modi's rule. An anti-China campaign right now will only cost jobs, affect supplies, and jeopardize India's startup ecosystem. And condemning the PLA aggression, the Confederation of All India Traders, or CAIT, an organization which claims to represent 7 crore traders and 40,000 trade associations, has launched its own Vocal for Local campaign called Bharatiya Saman Hamara Abhiman to substitute Chinese goods with locally produced goods. They even released 450 broad categories of commodities which have over 3,000 Chinese products, including everyday items, electronics, cosmetics, FMGC products, consumer durables, Diwali items, etc., and vowed to reduce the import of Chinese items by $13 billion by the end of next year. However, if we only look at the sale of cell phones, for example, according to reports, amongst the top 5 best-selling smartphone brands in India, 4 are Chinese brands that are Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, and Huawei. And the last being the South Korean company Samsung. And a report on News 18 says, and I'm quoting one line from the report, quote, the combined sales of Chinese mobile phones companies in India crossed $7.2 billion or rupees 50,000 crores between 2017 to 18, end quote. So given all these factors, how much would these protests affect Chinese companies? While Professor Ghosh says that India should reduce its dependence on Chinese items, specifically in pharmaceuticals, she also says that the effect of boycott Chinese items on Chinese companies would be fairly marginal.
Well, India accounts for 2% of Chinese exports. And about 1.5% of that, in other words, out of that, 75% are essential things that we simply cannot just stop importing right now to do. So it will be so marginal that the Chinese will probably not notice it. We should certainly reduce our dependence on China. Some of us have been saying this for a while. We've been saying this for at least 6 years, specifically about drugs. Well, that doesn't happen overnight. These are things that require planning. They require a clear strategy. They require incentives to the investors. We need to have a proper public sector producing the bulk drugs that we're currently importing from China. We need, if we wanted to do it, we should have started earlier. We can still start to do, but the fruits of that will not be evident for at least 2 or 3 years. The government set up a committee in 2013. The committee gave its report in 2015. Nothing has been done. So in all this talk, it's basically rhetoric, and I think it's an attempt to divert people's attention away from the complete mess that we have made of the border with all our allies and with all our neighbors.
The clashes in concern that has triggered this popular anger amongst the masses seeking retributory action for the deaths of Indian soldiers are indeed of great concern to India, considering that these clashes took place while a de-escalation process was underway. And the government on its part has been trying to diffuse the anger amongst the people and also the tensions at the border. PM Modi also put out a firm message saying that India's sovereignty and unity will not be compromised. But Brahm Chelani, a professor of strategic studies at the Center of Policy Research, says that the government will be judged by its actions and not words.
इस समय जो पॉपुलर एंगर इतना है देश में कि सरकार कोशिश कर रही है इस पॉपुलर एंगर को डिफ्यूज करने की, तो मीडिया के थ्रू स्टोरीज आ रही हैं कि भारत बहुत ही सख्त पॉलिसी अडॉप्ट करेगा, पर शब्दों से कुछ नहीं होगा। जब हिस्ट्री लिखी जाएगी तो मोदी जी का जो रिकॉर्ड है, शब्द उन्होंने जो उनके शब्द थे, शब्दों के बेसिस पर तो हिस्ट्री नहीं लिखी जाएगी। उनके जो एक्शंस हैं, on those actions the history will judge मोदी। तो इस समय जो कोशिश है सरकार की कि पब्लिक एंगर को डिफ्यूज करने की, to what extent will they be able to diffuse this anger unless they really act? अब छोटे छोटे कदम भी अगर आप नहीं लेंगे, कोई नहीं कह रहा कि सरकार को कि आप युद्ध कीजिए, कोई नहीं कह रहा, कोई राइट माइंडेड इंडियन will not want a war. War is only the last resort. But इस समय you are facing aggression. जो चीन ने किया है is an act of war. It's an act of war. और जिस तरह से उन्होंने इंडियन सोल्जर्स को मारा और उसकी हत्या करने के बाद उनकी बॉडीज को म्यूटिलेट किया, ये जो बार्बेरिक तरीका से इन्होंने मर्डर किया इंडियन सोल्जर्स को, ये जानबूझ के किया कि भारत को एक मैसेज मिले कि भारत से डर जाए। अगर भारत डर जाता है, कुछ भी नहीं करता है, तो चीन की इसी से तो विक्ट्री हो जाएगी। चीन का जो पॉलिसी है कि टू विन विदाउट फाइटिंग।
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.